Hi friends, Astrologer Joe here, and here is another update video that I wanted to cover because if you've been paying attention, you know there's a lot of chaos going on in California and especially in the Los Angeles area. Now, for those of you that have been following me for a while, I talked about how Los Angeles was right in the center of a lot of this chaos about a year ago, maybe even less than a year ago, when I did the chart for Los Angeles. I said in the coming years, Los Angeles is going to have a very difficult time. And so here we see the beginning stages of some chaos, disruption, and we're going to continue, unfortunately, we're going to continue to see more of it. So we're going to have to, pay attention to what's going on. And if you're aware and awake about what's really going on, you know that this is all pretty much planned and paid for, and unfortunately it's going to be a rough summer, I believe, because of the astrology. So that's why I'm saying this. I'm not trying to be a doom and gloom kind of guy or a doomsayer. We astrologers try to look at everything objectively. What kind of energy is formulating? Are there positive aspects taking place? Are there going to be what kind of outcomes are we going to have? So everything that I see in these charts coming up for the next year or so, year and a half or so, looks like LA is going to be a rough spot. So I've got a bunch of charts here that I put together. I went over the astrology this morning and I'm looking it over, and I said, wow, LA is really going to have a really interesting time, coming in the next year. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right. So the astrology right now is off the charts. As I'm doing this video today, Monday, June the 9th, the astrology is off the charts. We've got some really rough alignments coming in, and we have Jupiter that's about to enter Cancer. And that just pours more fuel on the fire, because Cancer is a very emotional, passionate sign. And so we're going to see a lot more activity in this area, and more than likely, again, in some of the blue cities and blue states where things begin to escalate, because those cities and states are completely controlled by the deep state. Okay, so you have to understand this stuff. And again, I have to be very careful what I say here. If you want to know more, I have the private community. I left the link down below. There I speak very freely. All my members know who these deep state players are. And, consider joining. There's a 7-day free trial, so you've got no obligation. But I go really in depth there and discuss who's making the moves and what's really going on. Anyway, let's dive into this video and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let's look at the city of Los Angeles. This is their chart, their birth chart, September 4th, 1781 at 9:18 a.m. in Los Angeles. That's when they incorporated or created the city of Los Angeles. So we could see here that the sun was in Virgo and the moon was in feisty Aries. So we're looking at very turbulent energy to begin with, because Virgo is very nervous, energy. It's very high-strung energy, and so is Aries. Aries is a very volatile sign. But when we look deeper here, friends, for those of you that know astrology, and again, this is just symbolism. You have to understand this is just cycles and patterns, and understanding them through a mythological lens. That's all it means. Stories that are trying to convey something. So here we see the moon in Aries, 3 degrees, opposing Neptune in 4 degrees, and even loosely to Venus at 7 degrees, and squaring Uranus at 2 degrees of Cancer. So right away we see the city has a T-square built into it. Now, if you understand astrology, Libra is all about fairness, balance, legal issues. And, Uranus in Cancer could be very passionate and very emotional. And Aries is very impulsive. So we have this energy. I mean, this city has had riots before. Okay. And so we could see that in their chart, that it's a very volatile place when it comes to people when they're triggered. We also see something else here that's very important. Pluto is in Aquarius at 4 degrees. Now, this is very important because all of these points are going to be triggered in the coming year. So what does that tell us astrologers? That this is going to be a place to keep an eye on, because it's going to get very disruptive there. Okay? So again, it's just simple deduction. When we see these alignments occurring, And I'm going to show you, because I got plenty of charts here to show you what's going on and the near future and how it's going to affect LA. So for those of you that live in LA, I wish you well, and I hope you guys, do okay and stop burning down the city, yeah, because you're causing more negative destruction than you realize. Anyway, so let's dive into it and see what's going on. So let's look at the protests. Now, we did have some very volatile energy, as I had mentioned in my inner circle community, and I did try and post some stuff online. On June the 6th is when all this activity began in Los Angeles. But let's look at the chart, okay? Because look at Pluto. Pluto's at 3 degrees in retrograde, but it's still close enough, 1 degree apart, to the Pluto of LA. So right there we see an indicator of something that is triggering energy, that is building something up. All right. We had the moon in Libra. The ascendant of the rising sign for Los Angeles is in Libra. Libra is about fairness, and so we see that building up. We see Mars coming close to the Mercury in the chart here, and it will be conjunct as well. So we're seeing rumblings of things coming, and disruptions, and agitation, if you will. We also saw Venus just entered Taurus, which could be very passionate as well, and in the 7th house of other people. We're seeing Neptune and Saturn that are now in Aries, which is the moon sign of the birth chart of Los Angeles. So everything we're seeing here is an indication of something volatile that is occurring. Now, also, the transiting sun a few days before was squaring the sun of the Los Angeles chart. Square in astrology is action, frustration, inner tension, turbulence, and so on. We're also seeing a Mars squaring Uranus coming into being. It's not there yet, but Mars will continue to move this way. But we also see Uranus squaring very closely to Mercury, communication. We're seeing Chiron, the wounded healer, conjuncting or getting close to a conjunction to the North Node. This is the people house, one of the people houses. The 4th is the other. And we're seeing this volatile energy sort of rumbling. We see some rumbling. We see some irritation. We're seeing some movement here. Okay, but what really set this town off, or this city off, is what happened when the moon entered Scorpio. Here it is at 10:24, and I had it for New York, so just minus 3 hours, so 7:24. When the moon entered Scorpio, it immediately began to oppose Venus right there. So now we have this tension, because Scorpio and Taurus energy are very passionate. Probably some of the most passionate energy in the zodiac. But there's more. As soon as that moon entered, it began to square powerful Pluto. So now here we have another T-square developing here. So I did mention this to my private group, that there was going to be explosive energy or disruption of some kind that was going to erupt. And here we see it. Now, by the way, I said this weeks before it actually happened in my inner circle community, in the weekly astrology and on the Zoom calls. So my members, thank you so much for being there, because you guys are getting a heads up of what's to come, at least a few weeks ahead of time. And so here we see that volatile energy in the air here. We also see it in the chart of the LA city chart. Here's the inner circle. And let's see. So we have the moon just entered Scorpio in the 1st house of identity and self, opposing Venus in the 7th house of other people, legal matters, legalities. But it's also squaring powerful Pluto, but also loosely squaring the Pluto of Los Angeles, birth chart. So we have this giant T-square forming at the bottom of the chart here, which to me and many astrologers indicates volatility, pressure, stress, anxiety, frustration. And so we already have the moon in Scorpio opposing Venus, which is passionate enough, and then squaring Pluto, 2 Plutos right there. So we are seeing lots of volatility. We're also seeing the sun, the transiting sun, at 16 degrees of Gemini at 36 minutes past the hour, also beginning to inconjunct Mars. Mars is about motivation, drive, and determination, but it's unrealistic. because it's an inconjunction. So it might not be real or unrealistic. So what is happening? People are getting frustrated that people are getting arrested that technically shouldn't be in the country, or according to the sources, basically saying that the people they're going after are actual criminals, who have records. So it's not like they're going after the innocent person that just came over the border, that wants to just have a better life. Supposedly they're going after the ones that have criminal records. So anyway, you guys judge for yourself, but I'm just saying this is what's going on here. But again, I'm just showing you the astrology and how volatile it is right now for Los Angeles. So here we have on Saturday, the energy continues and the moon exactly squares Pluto. And so this again is very volatile energy and loosely still connected to Venus. So we're seeing lots of volatility here in the charts. And so this, we could see it after an event occurs. But here is the moon squaring exact right there. So overnight, the protests continued from the 6th into the 7th. So the volatility continues. All right. I also want to draw your attention to one other thing. Jupiter and Mercury are in Gemini towards the last degrees, and Uranus is in Cancer. Jupiter is about to enter Cancer, and we're going to get into that too, because anytime any one of these planets gets triggered, the energy goes up in that environment. You see, because we have a T-square that's active here. So when we have something that comes over and triggers any one of these 3 points, or even 4 points right there, activation, energy, everything goes up. So let's talk about Jupiter in Cancer. If you've been following me a while, I've talked about this is a very important year for the United States because the United States is born under the sign of Cancer. Okay, 1776, July 4th, that's Cancer. The sun was in Cancer from Western astrology anyway. So we see the dates here to June the 30th, 2026. So this coming year for the United States is going to be right in the crosshairs of all this astrology that we astrologers are seeing. So there's no way out of this. Good, bad, or indifferent, it's going to be active in the United States. So we see here, Jupiter enters Cancer on the 9th, which is today, later today. I'm doing this video in the afternoon, Southwest time. Anyway, there it is right there. And I said in the United States' chart, look for disruption, passion, chaos, legal issues that are going to be front and center. Jupiter and Mercury now are both in Cancer, triggering the United States' Jupiter and Venus. And they're also making a loose square to Neptune and Saturn. Now, this is very important because squares in astrology indicate desire, passion, irritation. It's like they force us to do things. Okay, it brings things out in us. We also see the transiting Mars is in Leo, opposing or loosely opposing the moon in the United States. What did I say? If you go back a couple of videos, I said, watch for events to occur in the United States. Passion, people, protests, disruption of some kind. What do we see in LA? Boom. You see that going on. And there was something else going on in New York as well. But again, I've said this for almost a year now. Watch the blue cities and the blue states. This really has very little to do with politics. It has to do with the powers that be that are causing disruption in these areas because they are completely controlled by the deep state. And when I say deep state, I do not mean just the United States. The deep state is a worldwide cabal, if you will, or organization that runs the world. They own the politicians. Okay, and so it appears that we have friction that they're going to ensue or create because they understand astrology, because they know the timing of these things are going to be or try to be very beneficial to them. But those of us in the know, don't feed into it. Try and stay out of the anger, fear, frustration mode, all that stuff, and try and always see the bigger picture. That's my message to everyone. Look at the bigger picture. Who's running the show? Who's pulling the strings? What do they really want? Okay, and I'm talking about the powers that be, not so much the protesters. The poor protesters, I hate to say this, they are so ignorant to what's going on. All they're doing is, passionately doing what they're being told to do, and they're being paid for it. And they don't care because this is what, how they view the world, and they think that this is where they could take a stand because of their own frustrations. But I always say, look at the bigger picture. Who's pulling the strings? Who's funding them? What's the agenda here? Why are they causing this now? That's my suggestion. Anyway, going back to Los Angeles, we have Jupiter entering Cancer in the Los Angeles chart. Now look at what happens here, friends. Jupiter begins to trigger Uranus, which then again begins to trigger Neptune, Venus, the Moon, and even Pluto. Okay? So Jupiter is going to be that trigger. Jupiter in Cancer is very passionate. So we already have Mercury there. But Mercury is about speaking your truth and, bringing things out. And it can also be passion. And so what are we seeing? People getting frustrated with something. So Jupiter is going to continue to make its way here. Will absolutely conjunct Uranus, which again, over the next couple of days or even weeks, we are going to see more clashes in Los Angeles. Unfortunately, especially since now the military is coming in, the National Guard, and, they're talking about bringing the military in. So we absolutely are seeing this in the astrology, okay? So brace yourselves for you folks that live in those cities that I'm talking about, the blue cities and the blue states. Let's talk about the full moon. So if you guys have been following me a while, you know that this is a extremely volatile full moon. Okay? This is about adventure, taking a risk, getting out of your comfort zone, and that's a full moon in Sagittarius, and this happens on the 11th. So this, again, here's the chart. It's going to be at 20 degrees. The moon is at 20 degrees, squaring the north node in Pisces, which indicates someone's belief systems are being challenged. We need more spiritual understanding because the Pisces moon is about spirituality and compassion. So for those of us that understand what's going on, we try to be as compassionate as possible. These poor people do not understand what's really going on. They're being used as pawns. For me, I could see right through it, but the people on the ground, they're just frustrated at life and opportunities, and and they need a boogeyman. They need somebody to direct it at. And so what are they doing? They're being instigated and being paid to be frustrated and take out their frustrations on this on this government that we have now. Okay, so can you see that, friends? I'm just talking objectively here of what's going on. But what the astrology and the full moon is indicating to me is we need more understanding and compassion. We need to understand, if these people were actually understood what's going on, they wouldn't be rebelling against the government here. They would be rebelling against the people in the shadows and the corporations behind them that are funding all of this, but they don't have the capacity to go that deep or the desire because there's too much money flowing in those areas and too much passion. So anyway, you could see that this is going to be a very volatile full moon. Here it was in the United States. I talked about it, and it is in the United States' chart once again with Mars in the crosshairs. And so with Mars in the crosshairs, it's extremely volatile. So again, I'm expecting to see more protests in different cities and different states, primarily in the blue states. And I only say blue because it's easy to understand. These are the Democrat-controlled states. And not that I'm a Republican or anything like that, but these states are completely controlled by the deep state. And they're easier to manipulate. So here we see Mars also opposing the United States' moon. So we're looking at volatility. We see a square coming into Uranus, also into the moon and into Mars. So, there's no way out of this, friends. These next couple of days is going to continue to be ugly. I'm sorry, I have to say it, and there's going to be disruption. There'll continue to be disruption according to this astrology that I'm seeing here. So let's see how it plays itself out. Here it is, the full moon in the Los Angeles birth chart. So we're seeing in the 8th house to the 2nd house. It has to do with values and beliefs, financial matters, disruption, death and rebirth, transformation. All right. And the North Node is in the 5th house. They're trying to create something new. And Neptune's energy can also dissolve, or there could be frustration, which they are, absolutely showing. It's coming out. But we also see, again, Mars is also beginning to square Uranus. So, and it's volatile. It's absolutely volatile. And again, we see Pluto. Fortunately, it's in retrograde mode, but it's not conjunct the natal Pluto. But it will be, friends. But what's really interesting is Saturn and Neptune are creeping closer to the conjunction of the moon, which is in Aries, again triggering another point on this T-square alignment. So I'm seeing volatility here. I hope you guys could see it as well. The moon will be, let's see here, the sun will be in conjuncting Jupiter in the first house. So I'm not seeing anything, calm and cohesive here. I'm seeing disruption. I'm seeing vocalization. Of course, all the Mockingbird press is going to be out there, repeating the same thing like a bunch of parrots about what's going on. And so this is what we have. This is the great divide that's occurring between those that want to live in fear and anger and those that are awake and aware and are understanding things on a larger scale. That's what I see happening. Anyway, let's go to the 15th, where, again, I said extreme volatility. Extreme. Why? And I'm not trying to be negative. Look at Mars and Uranus. There's Mars at 28 degrees. There's Uranus at 28 degrees. Both are squaring each other. Square is challenges, frustration, turbulence. So we're seeing that right there. Jupiter begins to square exactly Saturn. Jupiter's expansion, but it's also in Cancer, passion. Squaring Saturn, government, restriction. So we see two very active squares taking place here on the 15th, or leading up to the 15th. So from the full moon to the 15th, it's extremely volatile. We also see the transiting moon on the 15th continues to creep up. And as it continues to creep up, it will make alignments as well, triggering more energy. So for instance, when the moon, probably on the 16th and 17th, the moon will be opposing Mars and squaring Uranus. So again, we're looking at volatility. People getting frustrated, explosions, the car bombings, the fires, all that stuff. It'll be escalated even more. Here we see it in the LA chart, or the US chart. I did say that there was going to be a lot of disruption here. We see the exact, look at this, Mars opposing the moon, squaring Uranus, volatility to no end. We see now that Saturn and Neptune are in the fourth house of home, feeling, and foundation, which is the homeland. Here it actually, indicates Los Angeles. We're seeing volatility with Jupiter, very closely aligned to Venus. And so everything, here is showing we professional astrologers that there's volatility in the air, friends. This could be legal action too. The 7th house and the 9th house represent legal action. So I'm sure there'll be all kinds of lawsuits thrown at the government for this. And so here we see it. And also Mr. Trump has talked about going after Newsom, and he's been criticizing Newsom and the mayor, and maybe possibly taking legal action. He did mention that. So there is that possibility. So we'll see. Okay, so let's see what develops here. So here it is in the Los Angeles birth chart. Mars right there on the Mercury, still close to the Mercury, conjuncting, squaring Uranus. Unpredictable, wild energy. Jupiter conjuncting Uranus in the chart, squaring. Okay, so this is like, putting fuel on top of the fire, then adding some more fuel on top of the fire, and then after that pouring more fuel on the fire. You see, that's what it looks like astrologically. We have Pluto also. We have, look at this, transiting moon is in the 4th house. This is not going away, friends. This is going to continue to escalate because Aquarius energy, or Uranus energy, which is one and the same, is very disruptive. It is very chaotic. It's like, no, we're not going to do the same damn thing over and again. It's frustration. It's rebelling against. It's revolution. So here we see it in Los Angeles. Okay, friends? And we're also seeing Neptune and Saturn beginning to oppose Neptune here. It won't really oppose Venus for at least a year or two, but it's still a loose connection. So we see all of the oppositions, the T-squares, the inconjuncts, the square to Mars and Uranus. It's very volatile, okay? And so, we also saw Venus also squaring Pluto. So again, it's just like it's a no-brainer to where astrologers going, woo, wow. In astrology, when you have aspect after aspect that are hard and heavy, it's almost guaranteed, activity in those regions. So this is what we see. Now let's escalate this even more. Mars will leave Leo and go into Virgo. Now this is going to be very interesting because the Los Angeles chart was born under Virgo sun. So guess what's going to begin to happen as Mars makes its way over the sun of Los Angeles County? Yes, you got it. More trigger, more fuel on the fire. And so here we see it in the 10th house. And then we see it conjuncting. Here's the date, July 8th, 7th, 8th. Right there, Mars conjuncting the sun of Los Angeles County. So here we see, again, lots of volatility in the air. I think it's going to be a very interesting 4th of July celebration in the United States. Many of us astrologers are going, woo, we are entering the summer of love. And I mean that sarcastically. But anyway, but it's going to be very tricky, friends. Do you see? And so, again, sometimes, one alignment is not going to make a whole lot of difference. But when you have others behind there. Now, I'll get back to this in a second. But notice Uranus has left Taurus. And on the 7th, it goes into Gemini. And I will cover that, okay, towards the end of this video. Why that is super important. So, but Uranus in Gemini is much more vocal and much more outspoken. And so we're going to see that. But this is, again, volatility that I'm seeing. Now, let's go to the sun in Cancer. We're still in June now, June the 20th through July the 22nd. Cancer is a very passionate sign. It's a home sign, yes. It's a self-protective sign. But again, we're indicating lots of activity in the United States because of the sun being in Cancer in the birth chart of the United States. So here it is once again, triggering the Uranus in Los Angeles County. Not only do we have Jupiter, notice 2 degrees, now we have the sun on top of that, compounding it even more. So we have 2 planets, powerful energies, triggering the T-square inside the Los Angeles County chart. Do you guys see what I'm seeing, friends? And as Jupiter makes its way over the next week or so after this date, it continues to square transiting Pluto and natal Pluto. Again, very disruptive. But wait, there's more. We also have the square to Neptune and Saturn, which has been in play. And Jupiter will square the moon of Los Angeles. Do you see what I'm talking about, friends? There's no easy way out of this. There is just too much energy coming into this county, to this city. And the people are feeling it. And they are acting upon it impulsively or just naturally. This is how it works. And so we astrologers look at this and we say, wow, I hope it works out the way it needs to. And it always does. Everything always works out the way it should. But in the meantime, there's so much passion and disruption that I'm seeing here coming. There is no easy way out of this, friends. I'm sorry to have to say this. I'm looking for some sort of silver lining here, but there is none. Not at the moment anyway, until things really change. So this is like, it's like a volcano, it just keeps bubbling, and then eventually erupts. And that's the kind of energy we're seeing here. So we're seeing the new moon also on the 25th, activating this 9th house, legal issues, frustration. Again, it triggers the moon. It triggers Neptune. It will trigger Venus. It will trigger Pluto. Do you see, friends? And even trigger Mars, because it's making an exact sextile. Now, sextiles are usually pretty easy, but when you have more aspects on top of aspects, even if they're good or bad, they will still bring in more energy. Okay, so this is what I'm seeing here. Very, very volatile, even to these transiting planets here. Extreme volatility in the LA County area, even during the new moon on the 25th. So let's talk about one other one that's going to be really big. Mercury enters Leo on June the 26th. And it will stay in Leo until September 2nd because Mercury's going to go retrograde next month. I'm actually working on the astrology for July, and Mercury will go retrograde on July 18th. So it'll go backwards, which means issues from the past resurface. It'll be retrograde all the way until August 11th, and it'll continue until it leaves Leo on September the 2nd. Unfortunately, I use this picture because look at the lion roaring. Mercury in Leo is very loud. Mercury in Leo likes to express itself. So given this energy is indicating self-expression. Guess what's going to happen in the LA County area? Okay, there's Mercury in Leo. And by the way, the birth chart has Mercury in Leo. This is why that area has a lot of creative people. People go there to become actors, singers, artists, and so on. Mercury is in Leo. That's a very creative alignment. And here we see Mercury making its way first in the 9th house, and it will go into the 10th house, which again is about status, people in power, and people are going to continue to be vocal. That's what I'm seeing. Then it goes retrograde and it hovers around here and like, what are we doing? Where's it going? And that all happens in the middle of July. So you could see the volatility here, but not before. Mercury will oppose Pluto, both of the Plutos, the transiting and the natal. As you can see, are 4 degrees. It will do this towards the end of the month, at the end of June. So we're seeing, again, more volatility in the air. We're also seeing something else. The Venus in Taurus is opposing Jupiter in Scorpio, exactly, and that could indicate things having to do with financial matters. For instance, if Mr. Trump decides to pull finances to Los Angeles County or the state for some reason, and that is possible. So you see this is what I'm seeing here. So again, lots of volatility. Jupiter still active. With Mars, as you can see here, the moon, and here. So we're still creating that T-square. So even when Mercury enters Leo, it's more of the same. Now, let's talk about Saturn and Neptune. These are going to be, again, big signs in 2026. And I talked about this a few videos back, how so important this is, because Aries represents the self, but Aries is also symbolic of the energy of fighting. It's the pioneer spirit. It's beginning something new. And they're both now in Aries, but not for long, because both of them are going to retrograde next month, and they will leave Aries for a while, and they will go back in Pisces, which makes them a little bit more docile. So it's like a cleanup act. But notice the date, February 20th, 2026, they both return to Aries. I'm expecting some fireworks once again in February of 2026 in Los Angeles County, because once the energy re-enters it, they're going to be here for a long time now. Saturn about 7 years, and Neptune, I think about 14. So we're going to see, or less than 14. But anyway, we're going to see a lot more volatility in the Los Angeles area. So let's take a look. On February the 20th, Saturn conjuncts Neptune once again, and right there. And as soon as it conjuncts in Aries, it still loosely begins to activate the moon in the Los Angeles County chart, which then again begins to activate the Neptune, which begins to activate the Uranus. You see how it works, friends? And the more they make aspects, the harder the energy becomes and the more volatile it becomes. So this is what I'm seeing here, friends. Lots of volatility in the Los Angeles County area for months to come, even into 2026. So this is not going to be something that's going to be resolved within a week and everything is great. Not according to the astrology, it's not. Okay? So we see LA conjunct the moon exactly, and there's the date, March 15th, 2026. So look for some major events to take place. There's Saturn conjuncting the moon. This could be anything from a new leadership, or maybe the governor gets kicked out, or the mayor gets kicked out, or whatever. There is absolutely something to do with leadership that is going to be very pivotal in March of 2026 in LA County. So keep an eye on this, friends. It's going to be very interesting to see. All right, let's talk about this guy. This in the background there, you can see the planet Uranus. Uranus is the planet of revolution. It is the planet that symbolically represents innovation, doing things out of the ordinary. It is about being different, okay? And this is going to heavily influence us in the next 7 years once it enters Gemini, because Uranus in Taurus has been very docile. It's been about our belief systems, it's been about our values, it's been about financial matters. And we've seen cryptocurrency and lots of talk about digital currency. And so we're beginning to change our understanding of how things work with finances, because Taurus is the sign of finances. But Uranus in Gemini is about our thinking and communication. As you can see here, I put here ideas, communication, technology, community. commerce, and transportation. All of these areas will be completely shifted or revolutionized in some way in the next 7 years. And notice it goes all the way to 2033. Now, it will enter Cancer for a short period of time, retrograde back out, and back into Gemini, but officially it leaves Gemini in 2033. So these next 7 years, extreme changes are on the horizon, friends. Okay, in our thinking, on our technology, how we communicate, speaking up, rebelling, all of that stuff. The energy is there for all of that. So we're going to view the world completely different. So here is that Uranus entering the 8th house in the chart of Los Angeles County. And the 8th house has a lot to do with finances, transformation, rebirth, all right? And as soon as it enters there, this is the changes that I'm seeing here in this city are going to continue to be extreme. There's no way this city is going to have to come back in a completely different way. Otherwise, it's going to be really tumultuous in some way. And Uranus is going to be here for 7 years in that 8th house of transformation. So the entire city of Los Angeles is going to undergo a massive transformation in the next 7 years. We'll just have to see how it plays itself out, though, friends. Okay? And as it begins to work its way this way, it makes a sextile to the moon. It makes a trine to Neptune and Venus. So this could, technically, because these are all favorable alignments, by the way, sextiles, trines, and a trine to Pluto. Some of these could actually be quite beneficial. Like, for instance, let's say they elect a new mayor or they have a new governor there, let's say in the next 2 or 3 years. And they say, let's clean up this city. Let's make it better for everyone. And that is possible, because these are positive alignments. So there could be something good that comes out of this when Uranus enters Gemini in 2025, beginning in 2025, and then 2026, where it's much stronger because it's making alignments to these planets, you see? So, there's the overview there, friends. I mean, if you could just see, if you're an astrologer or understand astrology, that it is a volatile time there. And it's going to be very interesting to see. Anyway, if you like this video, I'm going to be talking a lot more about this in my Inner Circle community every Sunday, Zoom calls. And there's a 7-day free trial, so you could sign up for free. And if you don't like it, just sign back out and you're gone. But I'm hoping you stay, because the weekly astrology has been really important to the members, because, this has been like a week ahead of time, 2 weeks ahead of time. I've been telling them what's going to happen. And so giving them a heads up on that. I also do the extended horoscopes there. And, of course, I teach astrology, and members get to ask me questions. We're on the Zoom call. Some people have their cameras on, some people don't. And we're interacting, and we're covering as much as we can what's going on with this major transformation in the world. Anyway, hope you have a great week, month, and year. And I look forward to talking to you soon. All right. Bye for now.